Hey, what is up, everybody? Welcome back into the podcast. Yet another episode of Crushing Fantasy Football. I am Bryce Lockridge, your host of the show, guys. Today, I'm going to be giving you my rankings 51 through 75 for the 2022 fantasy football season. And I love getting further and further into my rankings because this is when you have to really look at the fine details and figure out if guys that are typically going in this range are good draft picks for your team or not. And there's a lot of really good league-winning potential players that usually hover around the 51 to 75 range. So it's just a really fun part of the NFL draft, or part of the fantasy football draft that I love to cover. And I'm going to get right into it, guys. But real quick, if you haven't already, go down and hit that subscribe button below. And if you do enjoy my content today, give me a like, as likes help my channel a whole heck of a lot. Next, I am going to be getting into my rankings, starting with DeAndre Hopkins at my 51. Guys, DeAndre Hopkins is still a very talented wide receiver, one of the best receivers in the entire NFL from a pure talent standpoint, but the Cardinals offense is a mess. I really don't know if this offense is going to be efficient at all or not. I don't know what kind of target share DeAndre Hopkins is going to get this past year. Was very surprising to a lot of people. He didn't have a whole lot of double-digit target games. In fact, I think he might have only had one. He didn't receive anywhere near wide receiver one target share, and is he going to get that kind of target share this year? Is he going to get wide receiver 2 target share? We don't know. We don't know if the offense is going to be good at all. So there's just so many question marks about the Cardinals offense, but he's good enough to be in my top 75 because I'm buying the talent, and he does have a pretty good quarterback throwing him the ball. Next on my list is going to be Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert is one of the most talented quarterbacks in the league. He's got one of the strongest arms, right up there with Pat Mahomes and Josh Allen. He's loaded with passing weapons. All his passing weapons are coming back. He's going to have Keenan Allen. He's going to have Mike Williams. He's going to have Austin Eckler. This dude is part of what's one of the most explosive offenses in the league, and he does have the potential to be the quarterback one in fantasy football. Next on my list is going to be Zeke. I'm not sold on Zeke very much this year, guys. I see him going way too high in drafts. And the problem with Zeke is he's getting a little bit older, and it is definitely a split backfield with him and Tony Pollard. You know, he might be the running back one on the depth chart, but Tony Pollard is going to get just as many carries this year as Zeke. It's 1 and 2. Zeke's 1 on the depth chart. Tony Pollard's 2 on the depth chart, but Tony Pollard is the better back, and he's going to take over the backfield at some point this season. I'm telling you, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Tony Pollard's going to take over the Cowboys backfield and be the more valuable running back for fantasy football. On top of that, if Ezekiel Elliott gets hurt, Tony Pollard has awesome standalone value. So I have to have Zeke ahead of Tony Pollard to start the season because he's probably going to be getting most of the goal line work early in the season. So he has higher touchdown upside. That's the only reason I have him ahead of Tony Pollard. But look for me to move Tony Pollard ahead of Zeke as the season goes along, as he starts to become more and more the workhorse for the team. Number 54 is going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire. It's really sad how much he's underperformed since coming into the league. His first year, he was a top 10 pick in fantasy. Now he's looking like pretty much a high-end running back 3. It's kind of pathetic, but the problem with the Chiefs offense is they're just way too unpredictable, right? When they're on the 1-yard line, we don't know that they're handing the ball to Clyde Edwards-Helaire. They're just as likely to run a play fake and throw a pass to Travis Kelce or run some sort of crazy jet sweep to McCole Hardman or Tyreek Hill. Or, there's just too many unpredictable plays that team has in their playbook, and we don't know that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is ever going to get the goal line work that we need him to get to be a true running back 1 or even a running back 2. Next on my list is going to be Adam Thielen, guys. I still like Adam Thielen, okay? I think he's going to be a great value in this year's draft. Justin Jefferson's obviously the wide receiver 1 for the team. We know this. He's young. He's got all the talent in the world, great big playability. He's a target hog. He's got everything going for him. But Adam Thielen is still one of the most heavily targeted red zone wide receivers in the entire NFL. And as we know, if you follow my channel, I talk about this all the time. The most important factor for wide receiver production is red zone targets. If you get a lot of red zone targets, you're going to be a good fantasy wide receiver. It's almost impossible not to be because you're going to be scoring touchdowns, and touchdowns are the most important thing you could possibly have for a player in fantasy football. You can't rely on 100-yard games all the time, and so red zone targets are absolutely essential, and Adam Thielen is a guy that's going to be targeted heavily in the red zone, so I still like him for fantasy. I think that he's going to be one of the biggest steals in this year's draft. Next on my list is going to be Michael Pittman Jr. Okay, guys, Michael Pittman Jr. now has Matt Ryan throwing him the ball. Matt Ryan still has talent. He's not the quarterback that he used to be, but he's still pretty good. And obviously the offense is going to run through Jonathan Taylor, but Michael Pittman Jr. is going to receive 10 plus targets in most games. He's going to be the clear target hog, wide receiver for the team. And I think that the offense is at least going to be decent this year. So he's got some touchdown upside, but he's mainly going to be a good wide receiver due to heavy volume, and he's probably going to have another 1,000 receiving yard season. Next on my list, it's going to be Tony Pollard. Like I said, I'm not going to have him too much lower than I have Zeke even to start the year because I think that he's going to take over the backfield at some point. He's an elite handcuff option if Zeke gets hurt, and he's got awesome big playability and a great Cowboys offense. So I think that he is also one of the biggest steals in this year's draft. He's going around pick number 80 or 90 in a lot of drafts. I think that he should definitely be drafted at least a little bit higher than that. Next on my list is going to be Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, guys, now has more passing weapons than he's ever had in his career. Tim Patrick, Noah Fant, Cortland Sutton, Jerry Jeudy, Javonte Williams. He is loaded with offensive weapons. This could be a very, very good offense. I think it's going to be one of the better offenses in the NFL. And so Russell Wilson's fantasy numbers are going to balloon because of this. So draft Russell Wilson with a whole lot of confidence. Next on my list is going to be Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson can torch you on any given week for 100 yards on the ground and multiple rushing touchdowns. We love a quarterback that can run the football. He's boom or bust as far as his passing efficiency. There's weeks where he looks like a great passing quarterback. There's weeks where he can't pass the ball to save his life. But the rushing upside is always going to be there, and that's going to be a guarantee. So he's going to be one of the better quarterbacks in fantasy because of this. Next on my list is going to be Jerry Jeudy. This is going to be the most heavily targeted wide receiver on the Broncos by far. I think that Cortland Sutton and him are kind of duke it out for whoever's the better fantasy wide receiver. But I think that volume alone is going to provide plenty of opportunity and fantasy production for Jerry Jeudy. Next, right behind him is his teammate Cortland Sutton. Cortland Sutton is going to be the new Tyler Lockett. He's got awesome big play potential now that Russell Wilson is his quarterback. And despite being a slightly less talented wide receiver than Tyler Lockett, in my opinion, he's significantly bigger at 6'4", so he has tremendous potential with Russell Wilson being his quarterback. So I have him in my top 75. Next on my list is Dallas Goedert, great tight end. We saw it last year. He actually torched me late in the season when I was playing against him, so I'm still mad at Dallas Goedert for costing me one of my leagues by burning me late in the season, but he's great to draft for fantasy. Next on my list is going to be Darnell Mooney. Look, the Bears are going to load up with passing weapons over the offseason. No more Allen Robinson. Darnell Mooney is going to be the number one wide receiver on the team no matter who they draft. And I think that there's going to be a good supporting cast coming in for him to help the Bears move the ball down the field. So I think Darnell Mooney has some pretty good potential this year. Next on my list is going to be Hunter Renfrow. Hunter Renfrow is now the third option on his team, but I think that he's going to be a really good flex option because this offense is going to be darn good. Led by Devontae Adams and Darren Waller. I mean, that's probably the best 1-2 punch as far as pass catchers in the entire league now. And so Hunter Renfrow is going to have good touchdown upside as a consequence of being in this offense. So I think he's going to be a very strong flex option for this season. Next on my list is going to be Kyler Murray, one of the quickest, fastest quarterbacks in the NFL. He could definitely burn you on the ground. And I don't want to have him too high in my rankings because I'm not sure about the receiver situation for the Cardinals, and I'm not sold on the overall efficiency of the offense. But I think that due to being a dual-threat quarterback, he always has good fantasy potential. Next on my list is going to be Amon-Ra St. Brown. He finished the season super hot last year, won a lot of people their leagues with awesome performances late in the season. And because of this, I think he's going to be very, very overdrafted. Look, DeAndre Swift and TJ Hawkinson were hurt. This is a big reason why he was so productive. Do I think he's going to be decent this year? Yes, but he's going to be overdrafted. So I honestly would fade him in the draft because I think you're going to have to invest too much to get him. He's at my number 66. Next is going to be Matt Stafford. Matt Stafford has a ton of passing weapons. Looks like they have Allen Robinson now, and they still have Cooper Kupp, the best wide receiver in fantasy. So due to this, Matt Stafford has pretty high upside. Moving on to 68, Michael Carter Jr. Look, I don't like having anyone on the Jets, on my fantasy team. So I tend to fade all of them. But I think that Michael Carter Jr. is emerging as one of the better dual threat running backs in the league. He is a heavy target out of the backfield. I mean, they passed this dude the ball like crazy. He's a pretty efficient runner. And so I think if the Jets offense is at all improved, even just a little bit, he has some good fantasy potential. Next on my list is going to be Brandon Cooks. It looks like Davis Mills is going to be the quarterback for the team. I think this offense is going to be absolute garbage, but Brandon Cooks is the clear-cut wide receiver one. He has a dynamic skill set and is very talented, so I have him at my 69. 70 is going to be Ramondre Stevenson. Look, here's my advice. Fade Damian Harris earlier in the draft and draft Ramondre Stevenson. He's probably going to get you almost just as good of production as Damian Harris, and you can get him significantly later in the draft, so I think he's going to be a really good value. Number 71 is going to be Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper is on the Browns. That's the problem. Look, this team runs the football. They're a run-first attack, and Amari Cooper is a very talented wide receiver, but we saw with Odell Beckham, Jarvis Landry, receivers just don't produce that much in this offense. So I'm going to have Amari Cooper prove himself to me before I move him too high in my weekly rankings when I start the season. But right now I have him just inside my top 75 because I think the Browns offense is going to be a high-scoring offense due to being led by far the best split backfield that I've probably actually ever seen in Kareem Hunt and Nick Chubb. So Amari Cooper is going to get in the end zone at least a little bit. So I have him in my top 75. Next on my list is TJ Hawkinson, target hog tight end. Target hog tight ends that produce at the tight end position could give you weeks where they win you your week in fantasy because, look, if you get production from the tight end position, a position that normally doesn't produce any points, that can win you weeks and it can win you leagues. So TJ Hawkinson is a good player to have on your team this year. Next on my list is going to be DJ Moore. I don't know what the quarterback situation for the Panthers is yet, so I'm just not too sold on DJ Moore, but I'm buying the talent, so he's in my top 75. Next on my list is going to be Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow made it all the way to the Super Bowl this past year. It was fun to watch. He's got a ton and just an absolute plethora of passing weapons. Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. This team is just loaded with awesome pass catchers. And so Joe Burrow is going to be a good fantasy quarterback as a consequence of this. Next, the last player on my list is Devin Singletary. Okay, if Devin Singletary happens to lead the Buffalo Bills backfield, he's going to go way up in my rankings, but I don't think that he really has the talent of a true running back one. So the team is probably going to get another running back to split the backfield. We see this in fantasy now. Most backfields are split backfields. Devin Singletary is not really the type of running back that I see heading a backfield. If he happens to do that, I'm going to move him way up in my rankings. But for now, I have him a little bit lower because I think it's going to be a split backfield in Buffalo this year. All right, guys, I appreciate you tuning into my video, and I will catch you later.